A very good morning, Minister Raja, fellow speakers, delegates to the conference, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me here today. While the name of the conference suggests that it is for the diaspora, I think the session themes are much broader in scope. It also reflects the fact today the South Asian diaspora does not only create emotional bonds and diffusions of our cultural values and practices, but also forms the core of legal, entrepreneurial, and political systems in several countries of the world. Both Indus ports along the Deccan Peninsula were connected with the rest of the world centuries before the beginning of the Common Era. Seeds of maritime law were born in India's trade routes to this part of the world. Today, of course, the areas of mutual concern have expanded immensely between states and also between businesses across national boundaries. Modern businesses are increasingly international in terms of markets they serve, the supply chains that keep them ticking, the talent they acquire, and the competition they face. Many large companies now achieve their scale in the virtual space and own digital assets that drive their business models and valuations. This diversity of organization, patterns of ownership, offerings, scale, and scope pose many unique legal and regulatory challenges. There are many common currents underlying legal systems in South Asia, including corporate regulatory requirements. These are derived from shared history and shared experience. National needs have modified these systems over decades, and what greets us today are laws of common ancestry that are both similar and yet very different. Laws of a country embody aspirations of the people, that the nation, and the unique circumstances it faces. But internationalization of businesses is persuading us to attempt aligning across borders. This is an important matter as legal compliances in general and regulatory compliances in particular impose time, financial, and managerial costs upon corporations. These costs add non-monetary uncertainty to the future of the enterprise and can affect bottom lines. Onerous legal systems can act as barriers to entry in particular sectors, may confer unfair advantages upon the incumbents, stifle innovation within parts of our economy, or create incentives for the ones who are entrenched in businesses already. At the same time, law also enables responsibilities to be defined to ensure that various stakeholders in success of the enterprise present a fair picture of the company and is a signaling mechanism for the policymakers and business leaders. Patterns of compliances inform governments about the changes and adjustments that are needed to serve the needs of the entrepreneurship community as well as the economy at large. Enlightened regulation also catalyzes the adoption of international best practices in all areas of management, from social commitment to employee welfare to adoption of accounting systems that present true and fair picture of the company's finances. Law, I think, is a requirement for businesses in appropriate measure. Too many laws and too many regulations will kill businesses, and lack of law and regulation actually spells disaster for businesses. While we were discussing a new law to regulate companies in India 3 years ago, in an attempt to revise a law that was about 80 years old, a delicate balance had to be struck between stakeholders' view and bringing forth a unified piece of legislation that would reflect best practices, better defined roles and responsibilities for key management personnel, and how businesses relate to the communities they serve. However, no matter how much deliberation goes on into making of a law, it has to be tested on the anvil of practice. As the competitive landscape is continuously evolving, post-legislative periods are also very busy ones. There has to be a considerable amount of flexibility in tailoring the rules that are based on laws so that they can achieve the intended policy. This necessitates standing mechanism to capture feedback on an ongoing basis. What is needed today is to adopt elements of the same approach to develop an aligned set of businesses across South Asia. This is an urgent need as we are important parts of any Indian Ocean systems of trade. We already have overlapping regional and sub-regional trade associations and numerous bilateral and multilateral agreements. There are several platforms on which synergies can be achieved and meaningful discussions can be taken forward. There are many reasons why I think this would be a rewarding exercise. There are several similarities in the way businesses are run and facilitated facilitated across our region. There are established lines of trades in goods and services within the region that can immediately benefit from aligning our procedures and practices. This would be a great step forward in improving productivity and efficiency of our businesses. It will also help them grow bigger and provide greater employment opportunities. I also consider this as a low-hanging fruit, as it doesn't require massive capital investments. It can also be accomplished relatively quickly and can complement more long-term approaches of social transformation. Greater emphasis on the idea of corporate social responsibility can also create more substantial pools of funds for socially impactful interventions. Innovation in developing business law themes should also pay special attention to dispute resolution mechanisms. Multiple such mechanisms should be available to resolve business disputes across borders, and all governments must be equally committed to a speedy result that shows effective follow-up. A long-term plan of the direction in which national law should be evolved must be developed as a roadmap, and would require political consensus that should be built behind it in each country. The idea of convergence will not work if our respective capitals do not constitute a part of it. I'm sure that many of you will agree that laws should be made not to create barriers, but in fact to create a more benign regulatory mechanism. I think the fact that we can provide a level playing field, we can create a meaningful order and offer credibility to our business environment is the real basis why laws and businesses must come together. Businesses, I think, also look for long-term stability, and that is something that every policymaker must look at while we enforce and make such legislation. The Indian Companies Act in 2013 was passed after 80 or 90 years. The fact that our previous law did not have any concept of what e-commerce was, we have tried in this new legislation to focus on self-reporting, on self-regulation, on making sure that the independent directors have a defined role, have more direct responsibilities. We've also made it mandatory, by the way, in India to have at least one woman on every board in India. We've also are a country that has for the first time put a statute on CSR, which is a legislation that has not been passed in many parts of the world. We've also had the opportunity to involve technology and internet to make sure that the law of the land today reflects the global reality of 21st centuries. I'm sure many sessions today and will follow up with other discussions will lead to a vigorous feedback on many of the topics that we discussed today. I consider it a great pleasure, and I'm going to thank Ambassador Pillai for having organized this fantastic event. Thank you very much.